You navigate to a standard web page. The browser renders the text and images, and in a fraction of a second, your entire operating system is compromised. On March 19, 2026, Google pushed Chrome Update 146. This patch closes 26 security flaws, including up to 4 critical risks and 22 high-severity vulnerabilities. The core threat identified across these flaws is unauthenticated remote code execution, or RCE. RCE is a vulnerability that allows an attacker to run their own malicious commands on your machine without needing your password or permission. The delivery mechanism requires zero user interaction beyond opening a link. An attacker routes you to a specially crafted web page, and the malicious code executes silently in the background while the site loads. Unlike security patches issued after an attack occurs, Google confirmed these specific flaws have not yet been exploited in the wild. Update 146 is a strictly preventative measure. The underlying cause for almost all of these vulnerabilities comes down to memory safety errors. These occur when a program mismanages how it allocates, reads, or releases computer memory. A modern browser is a massive, complex attack surface. These memory errors cluster heavily in peripheral components, specifically the pipelines that handle graphics rendering and data processing, rather than the core browser engine itself. Every browser update serves as a critical repair to a highly privileged virtual machine, sealing it against microscopic memory exploitation. To understand the architecture of Update 14.6, we have to look at what happened earlier in March 2026, when Google had to issue emergency patches for active zero-day exploits. 0 days are vulnerabilities that attackers find and use before the software vendor knows they exist. The first major 0 day was CVE 2026-3909. This attack specifically targeted Skia. Skia is the open-source 2D graphics library Google uses to draw text, shapes, and images on your screen. The flaw in Skia was an out-of-bounds write. This is a specific type of memory error where a program tries to store data outside the designated memory area it was given. In this memory buffer diagram, when a program writes data larger than its allocated space, excess information spills over the border into adjacent blocks. Overwriting these spaces lets an attacker erase legitimate code, replacing it with executable instructions. The second active 0 day from earlier in the month was CVE 2026-3910, which targeted V8. V8 is Google's dedicated engine for compiling and executing JavaScript code. This flaw was logged as an inappropriate implementation. It allowed attackers to manipulate the parameters of how JavaScript is executed, forcing the engine to run commands it should have inherently restricted. These 0 days prove peripheral rendering libraries and JavaScript engines are prime targets for hijacking the base operating system. Google issued Update 146 on March 19th to preemptively close off similar attack vectors before they could be weaponized. The critical fixes in this release focus on the Chrome base component and the WebGL component. WebGL, or Web Graphics Library, is a JavaScript API used to render interactive 2D and 3D graphics directly within the browser without requiring any plugins. This flowchart illustrates the Chrome Sandbox. While most browser processes are heavily isolated, WebGL requires a direct, privileged data pathway to the operating system's graphics layer. This direct hardware communication means any vulnerability here bypasses standard restrictions, enabling remote code execution. Update 146 patches 2 critical vulnerabilities specifically inside WebGL, CVE 2026-4439 and CVE 2026-4440. These are heap buffer overflows and use after free conditions. Compromising WebGL provides an adversary with a clear route to bypass standard browser security protocols by exploiting the host machine's own graphics processing hardware. A use after free vulnerability represents a precise failure in how a system sequences memory allocation and deallocation. Here is how the exploit works. First, the browser secures an allocated space in memory to store a WebGL object, tracked by a memory pointer. Later, the system correctly frees that memory block when the object is no longer needed. However, due to a flaw, the pointer isn't deleted. It remains active, pointing directly at the empty address, a dangling pointer. Next, the attacker's web page forces the system to quickly reallocate that empty block, filling it with a malicious payload. Unaware that the memory contents have changed, the browser executes a routine calling upon the original dangling pointer. Instead of processing standard WebGL graphics data, the system unknowingly executes the attacker's payload. This single sequencing error at the memory level grants the payload full execution privileges, leading to a complete compromise of the operating system. A specially crafted web page is actually a microscopic memory allocation sequencer. It is built specifically to force this exact timing failure. Zooming out from the individual memory blocks, the architecture of a web browser reveals itself as a highly contested environment. Securing a browser requires constant management of memory allocation, strict heap controls, and rigorous bounds checking to prevent external data from crossing system lines. Updates are structural reinforcements. The code in Chrome 146 implements strict bounds checking within Skia and enforces rigorous pointer nullification protocols in WebGL. By applying these changes, Update 146 closes 26 distinct memory safety gaps before threat actors can exploit them. This image displays the update pathway. You can force the patch by navigating to the Help menu, selecting Help, and clicking About Google Chrome. The download alone does not secure the system. A full browser restart is mandatory to apply the security patches. Restarting the application flushes the current operational state. It forces the system to reinitialize the newly secured memory parameters within components like V8 and WebGL. The modern browser is a vulnerable virtual machine, and updates like 146 act as the critical structural repairs needed to keep it functional.